Welcome to this explainer. Right off the bat, we're going to dismantle a massive misconception about what true brilliance actually looks like out there in the real world. We usually picture intelligence as something loud, right? Something that really announces itself. But today, we're zooming in on a hidden pattern of brilliance. It's this fascinating concept called the Chameleon Effect, and it is all about the quiet, absolutely incredible intelligence of adaptability. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this comparison immediately, because honestly, this is where we get it wrong so often. Society tends to reward people who are, well, performing intelligence. You know exactly the type. It's that person at casual lunch trying to synergize the paradigm just to stand out, throwing around heavy jargon, leaning hard into high-level abstractions, and subtly dropping hints about their credentials. But the truly smartest people? No way, they're doing the exact opposite. They are practicing intelligence. They don't use jargon to stand out, they use absolute clarity to blend in. Their ultimate goal isn't applause, it's the comfort of the room.
Section 1. Rethinking True Intelligence. At the core of this is a seriously impressive skill called contextual identity shifting. Think about how difficult that actually is. Now, a lot of people mistakenly call this dumbing down your thoughts, but honestly, that's a terrible way to frame it. Instead, it's about deploying your intelligence differently so you can bridge two completely different cognitive worlds. It's like you're holding this incredibly complex idea in your mind, but you're constantly shifting the frequency of how you communicate it in real time, just so the person sitting right across from you can actually receive it without losing any of the depth. Imagine a structural engineer talking to a homeowner. The engineer doesn't just launch into a lecture on advanced physics, right? Instead, they explain a load-bearing wall by using a super relatable analogy of a heavy backpack and a human spine. By doing this, the engineer hasn't simplified the actual physics at all. They've actually solved a much harder problem. They've successfully translated the physics without losing one bit of the scientific integrity. That is true mastery. Brilliant communicators are constantly making these three quiet adjustments, and they do it almost completely invisibly. First, they read the room before they even utter a single word. They're picking up on the vocabulary, the pace, the overall emotional temperature. Second, they lead with the familiar. They literally use shared experiences as a welcoming doorway into a highly complex topic. And third, they follow the confusion, not the content. If someone's eyes glaze over, they don't just awkwardly restart or speak louder, they just quietly pivot. It's this profound sign of respect for the listener. Moving on to Section 2, the mechanics of cognitive compression. So, how do true experts handle massive amounts of data in casual conversations? They use a process psychologists actually call cognitive compression. It's this amazing psychological ability to take a huge, multi-layered idea and collapse it right down to its essential shape, all while perfectly preserving its core meaning. Think of it exactly like a zip file on your computer. When you zip a massive document, you definitely don't delete anything important, right? You just strip out all the redundancy and find a highly efficient way to carry that exact same information without the friction. Well, the brilliant person holds the full, uncompressed idea in their head, but they transmit a compressed, beautifully clean version that matches their listener perfectly. The result? The listener never feels talked down to, they just feel like they finally get it. And, well, that brings us to the ultimate problem with jargon. See, jargon is actually a form of compression too, but it comes with a massive catch. It literally only works if both parties have the exact same decompression software installed in their brains. This perfectly explains why jargon completely fails in mixed company. If your audience doesn't have the mental software to decompress those highly specific technical words, your message doesn't just land poorly, it totally crashes. Section 3. The illusion of complexity. Here's a bit of an uncomfortable truth for you. Complexity is actually really easy to perform. Seriously. Any graduate student can take a simple idea and dress it up in thick layers of abstraction just to make it sound incredibly sophisticated. But stripping a difficult, tangled concept down to its absolute irreducible clarity, now that requires complete mastery. You simply cannot compress what you do not fully grasp. This was actually the personal discipline of Richard Feynman, who was without a doubt one of the most brilliant physicists of the 20th century. He forced himself to explain his most complex, mind-bending work in plain, everyday language, and Feynman recognized that giving a plain language explanation wasn't some kind of favor to his audience. It was the absolute ultimate proof of his own understanding. If he couldn't do it, it meant he just didn't really get it yet himself. Section 4. The social gift. Look at this contrast, because it's an absolute game changer. When someone is a poor communicator, they might dazzle you with huge words and complex theories, and you walk away thinking, wow, they are incredibly smart. But when someone engineers a moment of pure, frictionless clarity for you, you walk away thinking, I am incredibly smart. You feel capable, you feel satisfied, and naturally, you're drawn to that person's comfortable presence. Everyone wants to talk to them, and this is exactly why.
Section 5. How to develop it.
The best news here is that this isn't an innate trait you just have to be born with. It's a discipline you can learn. Let's walk through 4 very actionable steps to entirely transform how you communicate complex ideas in your own everyday life. These are your practical tools for becoming a true contextual identity shifter. Okay, so here's how we execute these habits. First, the habit of studying your audience. You execute this by just pausing and listening for 2 full minutes whenever you enter a new group, just to gather data on their vocabulary and pace. Next up, build those analogy libraries. Develop 3 different metaphors for your most complex topics. Pull them from relatable stuff like sports, cooking, or nature. Third, use confusion as your signal. Notice how none of this involves speaking louder or slower when someone doesn't get it, right? It's all about recalibration. Try a totally different doorway. And finally, measure your success entirely by your listeners' post-chat confidence. If they feel empowered, you nailed it. I absolutely love this phrase. The room should always feel the warmth before it sees the light. Remember, creating a comfortable, totally judgment-free environment is a mandatory prerequisite for transmitting high-level intelligence. If the room is cold, if people feel intimidated, the light of your ideas, it will literally never break through. The most sophisticated thing a brilliant mind can do is disappear into the clarity it creates. This quote beautifully summarizes our whole explainer today. Ultimately, true brilliance leaves behind clarity, not some flashy performance of intelligence. When you truly master the chameleon effect, your own ego entirely disappears, and all that's left behind is pure, frictionless understanding.
So as you head into your next big meeting, or even just sit down at the dinner table tonight, I want you to ask yourself, are you communicating to feed your own ego, or are you actively adapting to make the room brighter? If true genius is truly invisible, how much of your own brilliance are you willing to hide just to make someone else feel smart? Think about it.